The Poco F5 camera hardware performs pretty well, but can Gcam deliver better photos and videos? Let's find out in this Poco F5 camera test. The free Google Camera port, or Gcam, I'm using for this comparison is from developer BigKaka, and there's a link to download this port and the config file, which is very important, in the video description. Let's compare a variety of images, including selfies and night mode shots, with both the pre-installed stock Poco camera app and Gcam. Then discuss some important notes about Gcam on the F5. To start, here's a pink flower, and I'll give the win to the stock camera since it's brighter, but Gcam does a much better job constraining highlights and pulling more detail out of the petals. It's just a little too dark. This linear shrubbery shot looks much better from Gcam. The clouds aren't blown out, shadows are lifted in the shrubs themselves, and there's overall just better contrast to the scene. By the way, I'm pretty sure a snake lives in that hole. I didn't see it, but it looks like a snake hole. I wasn't going to keep this image of the blue theater chairs in, but bear with me. Once again, the stock camera is too bright and Gcam wins. Unless you turn off auto white balance, then Gcam shifts far too warm and looks terrible. This is a setting you're going to want to experiment with, because it seems like the right AWB setting just depends on the scene. Rainbow umbrella shot, and I think stock camera does a better job. It's brighter as usual, but it also separates the orange, red, and dark red colors far better than Gcam. Outdoor building scene, and again stock camera wins. Good brightness without blowing out the sky this time. Gcam just did not expose this image well. Okay, here's a scene I set up with this white figure, and Gcam beats stock easily. Stock Poco camera is too bright again, and it does some strange things to its color. Gcam is not perfectly color accurate either, but it's closer. I wanted to test out the 2x zoom capability, and for this scene, stock camera wins. Without blowing out the highlights, it retains details in these shadowy trees, and when I use the digital 2x zoom, it's super obvious how much more detail the stock camera retains versus Gcam. This window scene is generally tricky for cameras, and neither app does a great job reducing all the noise in this bottom left corner, but stock camera does much better than Gcam. Now Gcam makes a comeback with this colorful bow shot. Gcam's color is punchy, which makes it look more lively than stock, even though the stock camera is brighter overall. Before we move on to selfies, night mode shots, and video samples, if this video has been helpful so far, please give it a like, and thank you. First, selfie from the main rear camera, and I prefer Gcam. My red shirt looks a bit off in both, but I do prefer the warmth and detail from Gcam. I tried to get portrait mode working for the main rear camera, but I failed, so I'm glad the stock camera does a decent job. The selfie camera is a good reason to install Gcam. It handles exposure much better than the stock camera. You might want to turn on the face retouching though. That is way too detailed. Portrait mode does work when using the selfie camera with Gcam, but it does a little worse separating me from the background. Night mode results are mixed. With this selfie from the selfie camera, Gcam easily wins in terms of detail and brightness. But with my lazy dog shot, stock cam wins. True, its color is too purple, but it's much more crisp and the brightness is good. This van scene is close, but I think Gcam wins with slightly warmer and more accurate colors. But Gcam loses with this flower vase image. Yeah, its color isn't green like stock camera, but it's just a blurry mess. To be fair, this is a worst case scenario. There was barely any light to work with. I think the rainbow umbrella at night is a tie. Sure, stock cam is brighter, but Gcam evens out the lighting on the fabric in a more appealing way. Lastly, this night fire hydrant shot. And they're similar, but I think I prefer Gcam, basically because of the detail in the grass. For video, the Poco F5 does an okay job. Stabilization is pretty good, but you do still see this annoying rippling when I walk. Gcam doesn't offer any improvements when shooting rear camera video, except for allowing a 4K 60 FPS option, which did actually work. Selfie cam video is not particularly well stabilized, but it looks fine, and Gcam doesn't offer much, if any, improvement. Alright, here's selfie video from the stock Poco camera. Alright, now here's selfie video from Gcam. A few things to note about this Gcam. I shot all of my Gcam shots using HDR Plus Enhanced, and I increased the number of normal and night sight frames by going into settings, lens setting, selecting the main camera, and changing the values. I did the same thing for the selfie cam. I'm sure better Gcam ports and config files will become available, so please let me know if you find one, and I'll link them in the video description as well. Thanks for watching, and check out my comparison between the Poco F5 and Pixel 7a right up here when it's ready. And please leave a comment with any questions you have, and I will answer them perfectly. Perfectly, like how I perfectly microwave ramen noodles. Perfectly.